So I named my morning's talk War, Peace, and Mourning, mourning, Mourning. So most of our Dharma talks touch on some personal experience. That's the structure we encourage. Rather than mostly or entirely talking more in the abstract about the Dharma, we tie it into personal experience with the hope that this will sort of set up a way or of being with your experience, which is you're allowing it into your meditation. And then at some point, it could be during the meditation, might be during that period of reflection afterwards, or in the conversations we have together after that, or maybe later in the day or week. Somehow you find the Dharma that's embedded in your experience in that meditation. Not always, but hopefully more and more. And as teachers or the people who are giving Dharma talks, we really want our experience to be somewhat more integrated before we speak of it, so that we actually don't sort of use you to help us process our experience, and most notably, not use you to process our trauma or dukkha. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that today, though. The war between Israel and Hamas, between the Jews and the Palestinians, is too close right now. Yeah, okay, it's a nightmare, albeit halfway across the globe, far away geographically. Yet, for most everybody I speak to, touching us so deeply in our psyche. What difficult times we're living through. Now, how many times have we said that? But for the moment, this war seems like the worst yet, that full display of really horror and degradation. Now, I'm well aware that the war is impacting each of us differently. And in such polarized times, it's really probably the easiest thing is to vehemently take sides, especially for those who have very personal or ethnic connections. The concept that seems most striking to me is international and intergenerational trauma. It feels like it's on display. The trauma of the Jews, the Holocaust, but throughout history, the trauma that the Palestinians have lived through, probably most of the people living there for all of their lives. I think they're a younger group of people statistically. And our political leaders are now speaking out about this. Our own Oregon Senator Ron Wyden, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Merrick Garland, they're speaking about this intergenerational trauma that's elicited from this war. I too, probably all of us, most of us experienced intergenerational trauma, but mine was quite obvious. My mother's first husband and my sister's father missing in action in World War II, which, as it turns out, is more traumatic than being found dead, finding a body. Never found the body. Both of them were very deeply impacted, and this deeply impacted my relationships with my mother, with my sister, and my own psychological makeup. Now, when I try to imagine the consciousness of the people who live in Gaza now, you can never imagine someone else's consciousness, but this just seems unimaginable. Most of them have never known anything but war or a kind of imprisonment. And now fleeing to who knows where and leaving most everything behind, it's just unimaginable, and unimaginable how this will end, if there is an end, because it does live on through the generations. But now I'm going to go to the peace part, okay? So it's really in juxtaposition. So a couple of days ago, I went to see a natural burial cemetery named Herland. It's named after the book. It turns out that book was written over 100 years ago. So Herland is deep in the forest on the slopes of Mount Adams, which is a mountain in the Cascade mountain range, and just coincidentally, close to where we'll be teaching a residential retreat next June, June 2024. And we'll talk more about that later. But at any rate, I went to her land, to this natural burial site, with an open mind, though actually not knowing that much about the place itself, nor really that much about natural burial, and not having strong, strong leanings, let's say. And the weird thing is, I left with a clear decision after a few hours, a couple of hours probably, walking around and learning about the place. I know this is where I want to go. This is where I'm going to leave my body behind. So they call the people who are buried there residents and also guardians. They say they're guardians of the forest. So I tend to think the forest is guardians of the residents there, but whatever, who knows how that works. But I left like so clear, it was so unexpected that I want my body to decompose there and create more life for this forest. Forest was beautiful. Ponderosa pine trees, oak trees, areas of deep forests, but also areas where it's more open and the sun poured through. It was a sunny day. It felt sacred, so peaceful. Now, that's where I got the peace in the title of the talk, War, Peace, and Mourning. So what is sacred? I was been trying to figure that out ever since. It was a felt sense. I think I must have gone into an altered state of consciousness, though it was subtle. Maybe yes, comparable to how I might feel after meditating, especially for longer periods of time, like on retreat. So this felt sense of sacredness is really not that easy to explain rationally, because we were walking around in the cemetery, in the forest, really. Felt like just walking around in a forest in many ways, having a practical, almost business-like conversation. Things like signing a contract, looking at how the size of the grave they dig, talking about the options. You can have a single grave, you can have a partner's grave, you can even have a lover's grave. There's so much I could say about the logistics and the stories, but that's not really what matters. What really seemed to matter was the feeling of sacredness and the sense of a deep silence. And strangely, at least for right now, I feel differently about my death after going there. Something shifted inside of me. I sort of know where I'm going, in that sense, where my body's going, what my body will become. So let's go to the last word of the title of the talk, mourning. Mourning for the dead and traumatized Israelis and Gazans, Palestinians. Mourning for all the people, generation after generation, who will be impacted by the trauma of this war. And also mourning for the family and friends of the residents, guardians of the Herland Cemetery. It was sacred, but right near where we were in one section, there was family and friends gathered for a young man who I assume had suddenly died, because that's what we were told, actually. And he was in his 30s, and I don't know the story, of course, but there they were, having their whatever celebration of life, whatever they call it. It was all there together. So that really brings me right back to reflective meditation. As we directly touch the dukkha of our life, as we mourn, we also invite in peace and sacredness. And that is where I'll end this talk.